Maggie's decided he's not
I just went through 2 graduations the last
All
10
right.
days.
Good evening. Welcome to our, I guess, last official board business meeting of the school year. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. I think we have everybody but Gary, who's not feeling well tonight. He is probably watching online. And please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, upcoming meetings, we have a meeting on June 18th. That will be a business meeting at 6:30 in the high school library, largely to validate election results and welcome any new members to the school board. And at that time, we'll decide on any future meetings, elect a chair, vice chair, and decide on any future meetings for the summer. Any action relative to additions or adjustments to the agenda? Sam?
Just because it looks like we have some teachers here and we're hiring some teachers, could we move them before the audit presentation? As much as I'm sure they would love to experience our audit. It might not be the greatest way to introduce ourselves to our new teachers, I'm not sure.
Fair enough. Everybody comfortable with that?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sam. Good idea. And any comments from the audience? Okay. Next up, I would hear a motion to accept as printed the minutes of the May 7th regular business meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody see anything in those minutes? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Great. Next up, we have recognition, which is usually the fun job of Dr. Turner, but I'm being a little bossy tonight because I would very much like to recognize our volunteer of the year for the town of Gray, Deb Carson, may be well known to folks. She is a Gray resident and parent to 3 students in our district. She was recently recognized by the town of Gray as one of their volunteers of the year. The Gray website has some material in that event, and a part of it reads, Deb received the Volunteer of the Year award for her dedication to children and families. Her involvement in numerous programs, from sports to theater and beyond, have shaped opportunities and experiences for young people in Gray. Deb is a longtime volunteer with the district and a leader with our Patriot parents. Annual teacher appreciation, the Dunn trip to Bryant Pond, son and daughter galas, and this year's project graduation are just a few examples of where she puts her incredible energy. She will be horrified to see this tonight, and I hope she's watching. Thank you, Deb, for dedicating so much time to the kids of Gray and Gloucester. One more not on the agenda. I'd like to take a minute to recognize a powerhouse in the room, and she's also probably not going to like it. This person has given up more than 20 evenings at an easy pass without even digging into the calendar over the school year to manage the school board or one of our committees. She takes our notes, manages our seats, deals with all our little gripes, personality quirks, and panic phone calls from me asking where our meeting is tonight. She brings the right pens for the right paperwork on the right days and is always more cheerful to us than we have a right to expect. Maggie, please come on down and accept our thanks for all your work behind the scenes. Yeah. Whoop, whoop. Gonna get you on camera just this one time.
We couldn't put on the agenda, or she would have called
Yeah,
in sick.
she would. Good call.
Thank you.
All right, recognition's fun. Thank you, Chanda, for letting me do it.
Absolutely.
Old business,
None.
we have none. New business, we are gonna hang on 1 minute on the audit presentation to hire some amazing new teachers.
I move to consider Hannah Godin to a first probationary contract as a special education teacher at the middle school.
Second.
Special Ed Department is very excited to be talking about 3 people here. So Hannah Goodine will be joining the special education team as the supported learning classroom teacher at the middle school. Hannah taught middle school English language arts for 2 years before transitioning to special education as the teacher in a middle school self-contained classroom for 6 years, where she worked with students with autism, intellectual disabilities, and Down syndrome, just to name a few. Hannah has a master's degree in teaching and learning from Liberty University, and we are looking forward to the classroom Hannah will create at the middle school. Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Don't look at me.
What? No, I'm just looking up and down. He's fine, don't worry about it. Welcome to the district and thanks for coming in on a beautiful summer night.
Welcome.
All right.
I move to consider Natalia Fulton to a first probationary contract as a school psychological examiner for the district.
Second.
So I'm pleased to introduce Natalia Fulton, who will be joining our special education team as a school psychologist. Natalia has 10 years of experience as a school psychologist and counselor in both Massachusetts and Maine. In this role, she completed cognitive, behavioral, and emotional assessments and supported school programs. For the past 5 years, she has been managing a behavioral health company of over 40 clinicians. She's excited to get back into the public school, and we are excited to have a complete on-site psychological team to evaluate students and provide support to teachers and IEP teams. Natalia has a master's degree in school psychology from Tufts University, and we welcome her to the team.
Fantastic. Thank you for being
Welcome.
here.
Questions, discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you, welcome. It's very exciting, actually.
So exciting.
Huge.
Huge.
Been looking for a long time.
Stay a while, please.
I move to consider Amy Crosby to a first probationary contract as a .6 art teacher at Dunn School.
Second.
All right, good evening. Amy wasn't able to join us tonight, but Amy has a Bachelor's of Art in Education from the University of Maine in Orono, a Master's in Instructional Technology from the University of Maine in Orono. She is working towards an Art Integration Certification from the Institute of Arts, Education, and STEAM in Westminster, Maryland. She has taught art in Skowhegan, Lisbon, Oxford Hills, and Brunswick. She has been the lead teacher for the summertime arts program at the Waynfleet School and run summer arts programs through the Brunswick Recreation Department. We're very excited to have Amy come and join us, and she lives right down the road from us in Durham, so that's going to be fantastic. She's right near Dunn School, so we look forward to having her join our team.
Great.
Questions? All in favor? All right, opposed? Perfect.
I move to consider Jacob Hanowin to a first probationary contract as a special education teacher in middle school.
Second.
Jacob is joining the special education team from Coney High School, where he has been a life skills teacher for the past 3 years. Prior to that, Jacob worked at Spurwink Services for 18 years, 7 as an educational technician and 11 as a special education teacher. Jacob will be teaching in our applied academics program for grades 5 and 6 at the middle school. One of Jacob's references described him as one of the best, and that we'd be crazy not to hire him. We are happy we did. Jacob has a bachelor's degree in behavioral sciences from the University of Maine at Augusta.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? All right, thank you so much, welcome.
I move to consider Haley Holman to a first probationary contract as a teacher, middle school.
Second.
So Haley also could not be here tonight, but she's going to be our new 7th and 8th grade ELA teacher. She's a Boston University grad with a master's in Hispanic language and literature. For the last 13 years, she's been a Spanish teacher at Oxford Hills Middle School, so she's making the leap from Spanish to ELA. Her former administrators describe her as a compassionate and thoughtful educator who is ready to provide solutions when problems arise, and she builds strong relationships with students and creates a safe classroom for them. I was also a teaching colleague of hers her first 3 years at Oxford Hills, and I can also attest to that. She truly has middle schoolers at heart. She also comes to us with a strong field hockey background. She played D1 and has been coaching throughout her entire teaching career. She's moving to the area this summer with her family, and we're really excited to have her join us at Green and Gloucester Middle School.
Questions? All in favor? Thank you.
I move to consider Samuel Fairfield to a first probationary contract as a teacher at the middle school.
Second.
Okay. So Sam also couldn't be here tonight. He's coming to us from New Hampshire. He has 5 years of middle-level social studies experience from the Paul Elementary School in Sanbornville, New Hampshire. He came from a really deep pool. We had over 30 applicants for the social studies position. He is a graduate of Plymouth State University with a degree in social studies education. What stood out to us about Sam is he's very involved in his community. He's coached sports, ran multiple clubs, and has quickly became an active member of their community. He took on a bunch of leadership roles and has done a lot of work in developing their 7th and 8th grade social studies curriculums. Currently, he lives in Maine but works in New Hampshire. He's very excited to both work and live in the state of Maine, and is hoping to move even closer to our community. So we're excited to have Sam join us.
Questions? Discussion? All in favor? Perfect. Thank you.
As hard as it is to watch our retirees go, the folks we're bringing on is so exciting that I'm sorry to see them go, but I am very excited at the pool of folks that are joining us. So thank you for coming. Don't feel you need to stay. It's okay to sneak out anytime you want. Or stay. Have fun. Either way.
All right, so let's jump backwards a little bit here and hear an audit presentation.
Thanks, you guys, for coming.
Thank you.
They're so good. I think we're still working through some technical difficulties.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to consider another item and wait a couple more minutes.
Well, I don't want to be super egregious with your time, Tim, but are we working on getting the?
Yeah,
Slide
unfortunately,
deck.
the little click share thing is not working at the moment, so the whole presentation that I had to share on the screen, so you can't see. I do have a couple
Okay.
printed copies. I have 3, but that's really hard for you guys to share 3 copies.
Well, if you don't mind, how is the title one? Is that lengthy or
Shouldn't be.
buy us a few minutes?
Should buy us a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
email it? Or
Well, and it's linked, it is linked in the agenda.
we have it?
Yeah.
We all have it.
So they do have the slides in front of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
We can just look at it on our,
Oh, okay.
on our screen.
Okay.
All right,
Whatever
you
you
just
prefer.
tell us when to move forward.
I will do that. Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I'll make this short and sweet tonight. I'm here to present the audit results of the fiscal year '24 audit. Before I get into it, I just want to say thank you very much to all the staff at the district that participated in the audit. There's a lot of information that's gathered and that goes into this. And so we couldn't do the audit without the staff, so we appreciate the help. It helps it go smoothly. Tonight, I'm going to talk about some of the high-level kind of audit results, what those mean, and then break down a few charts for you that show you the general fund and revenues and expenses and kind of where you wound up at the end of the year. So moving on, if you're following along, slide number 2, which is a summary of the audit results. And you'll see the first bullet point there, it says the financial statement opinion is unmodified. And so you're probably wondering what that means. Our whole purpose as auditors is to give an opinion on the financial statements as to whether or not they are fairly presented in accordance with all accounting standards, rules, and regulations. So anytime you have an unmodified opinion, it basically means you have a clean opinion, and we do believe that your financial statements are fairly accurate and fairly represent everything in accordance with all rules and regulations. There's a little kind of catchphrase in there that says they are materially accurate. It's basically, if you read through our actual audit opinion that's in the financial statements, it's 3 pages long. It basically covers us because it's basically telling you that there's a margin of error built into what we do, because we do not test 100% of all transactions throughout the year. We use a risk-based approach to kind of figure out our sample-based testing, and we focus our samples in the highest risk areas. The way we develop our risks is by getting an understanding of the district as a whole, what went on during the year, talking to staff, talking to management, looking at policies and procedures, and then testing some of the internal controls. That all gives us some good insight to direct the testing to the appropriate sample sizes. Again, the whole point being to render an opinion, which is an unmodified opinion, which is exactly what you want to get. Another part of the audit process is the reports required by the government auditing standards. So this kind of closely relates to the internal controls and that risk assessment process that I was just describing. Part of that process, as I mentioned, was testing the internal controls. A byproduct of that process is that we're able to give you some insight and some recommendation as to where you can improve policy, procedures, and internal controls to further reduce the risk of error, to reduce the risk of fraud or anything like that. That is not the primary objective of the audit, but it is kind of like a byproduct of what we do. Anytime we have comments or recommendations generated from that process, we're required to classify them into 3 categories. The most severe being a material weakness. Those are things that you really want to pay attention to. Those are things you want to correct as soon as possible and implement new policies and procedures right away. There were none of those to report for fiscal year 24. The next level down in severity is a significant deficiency. Not quite as severe, but something that you still want to pay attention to, create a process, create a new procedure, and try and implement a standard to change it moving forward. No significant deficiencies to report for fiscal year 24. So all of our comments for fiscal year 24 kind of fall into the catch-all category, which are basically just general recommendations, other comments, things that we think you could do to improve operating efficiency and minimize risk a little bit, but none of them are a high-level concern. The first of those other comments is the capital asset procedures. This is a repeat comment from the last several years. For the last several years, we've helped and assisted in maintaining the capital asset schedule for the district. As auditors, we really should not be doing that. That's something that should come from management and be given to us. We understand we do it for a lot of districts. There's just a certain level of time that management has to prepare a lot of these things, a certain level of expertise. So some of these things do kind of fall on auditors sometimes, but ideally we'd love to see that schedule updated by management, prepared by management, reviewed by management before it gets to us. Another comment that we had was related to information technology, policies, and procedures. As we all know, IT stuff is becoming more and more integral to everything we do, whether it's the education process or the financial reporting process. So as part of the audit, we look at your IT policies, procedures, we look at your controls and how they relate into the financial reporting software. We found that while there were some policies, procedures in place, there was definitely some room for improvement in those areas, formalizing some like unofficial spoken policy, unofficial spoken procedures. Some of those things could be more formalized, put down in writing, and just documented for more clarity. And then the last comment we had was related to journal entry review. We found during the year in testing our controls that journal entries sometimes were entered into the accounting software by one individual and there was no review process on that. It's a common issue we see at school districts due to the small size of the administrative department. Sometimes there's not that expertise within that department to have a second person review it and really know what they're reviewing. But to the extent possible, we recommend that you implement segregation of duties in any financial process to make sure that there's a second set of eyes looking at all financial transactions, especially as it comes to journal entries, which are inherently a way to kind of bypass controls in your financial accounting software. It's kind of a manual entry process if you're not familiar. So there really should be a secondary review process put into place. And it is my understanding, in speaking with management, that all these items have been considered and there's process in place to correct them. But I'm not going to speak to that. I'll let them speak to that if they want, or we can just move on. Any questions on those items?
Could you give us an example of the IT policy or procedure that might have been informal? Just
One of the things that we looked at was like data intrusion testing procedures. Is there a formalized policy as to when and where you're going to do data intrusion testing and record the results, and what you're going to do to implement if you find errors or something that where people can get in? That policy was not formalized. Data backup policies. Sometimes you were relying on third-party vendors for data backup and didn't really necessarily have your own policy or your own understanding of how that information is backed up. So just kind of gathering a little bit more information and putting that into place.
Mhm. That's very helpful, thank you.
On that slide, you'll also see one of the bigger bullet points is the third item as part of the audit process. It's the single audit or our audit over the federal grants that you received during the year. Anytime that you expend more than $750,000 in federal grants in 1 year, it triggers what we call a single audit or a uniform guidance audit, where we focus specifically on the testing of federal grants that you received and that you spent. Similar to a financial statement audit, there is a risk assessment procedure. There's a test of controls related to those grants, whether you're meeting all the regulations and rules and spending the money in the appropriate manner. We don't test all of the federal grants that you have. Again, we do a risk assessment process to determine what's a major program or a major grant that you have during the year. So in fiscal year 24, we tested the ESSER funds and also the special education cluster or the local entitlement funds, looking at things like, are you spending that on allowable cost? Are you reporting to the federal government the appropriate amounts in the appropriate times? And other various requirements under those grants. We're pleased to report that there were no compliance findings during the fiscal year for either one of those grants. So very clean opinion on that. And that's it for the overarching kind of summary of audit results. And now I'm going to go to page 3, which is kind of a summary of the financial highlights focusing on the general fund. Excuse me. So the general fund is just one of many funds that the district has. It is the biggest fund, so most of the activity of the district is within the general fund. There are some other funds, typically what we call special revenue funds, which account for those grants that I was mentioning. Those are usually segregated off into separate funds, so that's kind of outside the scope of what I'm going to talk about tonight. But the general fund covers pretty much everything else. And so fund balance, as you see on this chart, is basically your equity. So if you take all of your assets and all your liabilities at year end and you take it and you liquidate everything, what would you have left over to utilize and work with moving forward? That's your fund balance. In 2024, it was about $7.2 million, up from $5.9 million in 2023, about a $1.2 million increase. More specifics you can see on Exhibit A1 or A2 in the financials if you have those handy. So overall, a positive net increase during the year. The fund balance under governmental accounting standards is required to be split into several different categories. You have 3 of the categories presented in front of you here. During the year, you had some funds committed, which is amounts that are kind of voted on by the board and are somewhat restricted in their use, so they have to kind of be approved before they can be utilized. The biggest of which is the $2.4 million that you have in capital reserves. So those are kind of set aside for a specific purpose. Other committed funds include things like the $100,000 Planson grant, there's $154,000 in a technology reserve, and there's other various ones as well. If you want more information, you can look at page 41 in the notes to the financials. It lists them all out there. The next category down, which is a little bit more easy to use, a little bit more liquid, I would say, is the assigned funds. These are funds that have kind of been set aside for purposes, but are a little bit easier to manipulate and use for their intended use. The biggest portion of this is the $1.5 million set aside for the use of fund balance that's kind of being used to flow forward to offset next year's budget, so you don't have to raise assessments or tax revenue on citizens of the district. Another piece of that is about $600,000 of encumbrances. That's basically part of the fiscal year 24 budget that has been kind of spoken for. Maybe a purchase order has been sent out, but the goods or the service just hasn't been received. So that part of the budget is kind of already in use and being assigned to carry forward into the next fiscal year. And so anything that doesn't fall into those kind of restricted, committed, assigned categories just falls to the unassigned, which is basically funds or theoretical funds that are available for use moving forward. On page 4, there's more fund balance information related to the general fund, this time showing you your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget. Now, state law used to restrict you to about 3% of your unassigned fund balance as budget. Right around COVID, that jumped up to about 9%. They wanted to give you a little bit more leeway to use ESSER funds and things to carry them forward, going over in future years. So the current limit is at 9% of your fund balance. You were kind of temporarily over that in 2023, but you've dropped back down, moving some of those funds from the unassigned category into the capital reserves helped you reduce that unassigned portion as a percent of budget. So you're now back within the limit. If you go over the limit, it's not really a big deal. The state does give you several years to kind of create a plan and work that down. But if you're kind of a repeat offender more than like 3 years, then they start to kind of adjust your allocation. On page 5 of the presentation, you'll see the general fund revenues, presented budget to actual. This is just kind of summary of the information that's already in the financial statements. So obviously this is broken out in a lot more detail on Exhibit A2 in the financials. But just some quick highlights. Intergovernmental was a little bit over budget. In this case for revenues, over budget being a good thing. You collected more funds than anticipated because there was a little bit extra subsidy that was not anticipated. Charges for services exceeded what was budgeted due to increased tuition enrollments. And then there's the kind of catch-all, which is other revenues, which are typically not consistent revenues from year to year. So you really can't rely on them. A lot of places tend to budget those extremely conservatively because they're not reliable. In this case, that's what happened. And then interest income and facility rental income kind of shot up quite a bit from the prior years. So that's why that's showing about $100,000 of extra funds received during fiscal year 24. And then the last thing I'll point out on this slide is the use of prior year surplus. This is a budget entry. We spoke about it using the fund balance that you've kind of accumulated over the past several years, carrying that forward to offset your expenses in the next year. So you're basically using what you've already collected to offset your future expenditures. So it doesn't result in any actual real additional revenue. So you can put it in your budget, and it is included in your budget, but it doesn't result in actual real revenue, so therefore there's no actual there. So it's always going to show that big disparity. So that's nothing to worry about. It's basically you planned on that situation. I guess I'll stop there for a second and see if there's any questions on the fund balance or the revenues. Excuse me. On the next slide, there's the general fund expenditures. Again, presented budget to actual. As you can see, pretty much every category came in under budget during fiscal year 24. The big driver of that, wages, benefits, a lot of unfilled positions during fiscal year 24. So that's pretty much the big driver in every category. Special education was down due to a reduction in outside placements. Transportation also realized some savings in maintenance and electricity costs, but overall, wages and benefits. That's your biggest expenditure that you have in any fiscal year. So that's usually the driver as to whether or not you're over or under budget, minus excluding some capital projects sometimes. Page 7 is the general fund revenue distribution, just kind of a different way of looking at your revenues. Should come as no surprise. Your two biggest revenue sources are your local assessments and then your state funding. Local assessments typically around 51 to 53%. Intergovernmental subsidy and funding, about 45%. Not a lot of change from year to year. Not a huge trend one way or the other. No big changes. And then finally, the last slide that I have for you is on slide number 8, the general fund expenditure distribution. It's a little pie chart showing you where your funds are being spent. Number 1 category being regular instruction, as it is with pretty much every school district that I've seen. Number 2 category is usually always special education, so you're right in line with every other district. If you were to take this pie chart and lay it out over the pie chart that I gave you last year, you'd see that it looks almost exactly the same. The only change from year to year is that regular instruction collectively went up about 1% of your total expenditures versus your school administration went down about 1%. So just a very slight shift right there. But overall, as I was kind of researching this and looking into other districts for tonight's presentation, your allocation of expenditures is kind of right in line with the average of what I've seen in other districts. So that's usually a common question that I get, and so I just want to let you know you're right on track. And that's all I have for you tonight. That was a very quick and kind of high-level overview of the financial statements and the audit process. If you have any questions, I'll answer them.
Questions? Fran?
Yeah, I developed a question from last night. I attended the town's audit. Auditor had stated that they don't really audit for fraud in misappropriations. And your last paragraph, oh, I'm sorry, not your last, but sorry, it's gonna take me a minute. There is a, you addressed that in a paragraph, and I just want to clarify that. Well, simple question. Do you test for, it appeared in your presentation, you were saying you do test for it, and I think your paragraph refers to testing for it. I just want to clarify that.
The objective of
Is it up to the administration to, say we suspect, and then you do the audit? I mean, how's that work?
The objective of our audit is to give an opinion on the financial statements as whether they are fairly and accurately presented. A consideration of that is if there's any fraud going on or risks of misstatements that would affect the financial statements. Our audit is not designed to detect fraud because we don't test 100% of transactions. We do sample-based, we do risk assessments. We can't detect fraud. The only way you can detect fraud definitively would be to test every single transaction.
I got you.
So again, it's kind of like a byproduct. We do consider it as part of the audit process, but it is not the main objective.
Okay,
And we do not give an opinion specifically on fraud.
okay, that helped clear it up a little bit. Yep.
I would maybe like to add supplementary that as part of the audit process, I had to fill out the first time, I had no idea, as superintendent, a very long document where I talk about how we monitor and detect for fraud and report it, and all other members of the organization has to do it, the board chair has to do it. So there are parts of that where we are reporting to the auditors the practices that we are using to make sure that we are, preventing fraud.
Okay.
Tim?
In the past, there have been comments about like cash handling and student accounts and stuff. I noticed that's not in the comments this year. It must mean that we've taken care of business there.
I'll never say it's 100% perfect. Again, we don't test 100% of transactions.
Right.
But we did test the student activity funds as we do every year. We don't test all the activity funds. We kind of do it on a rotational basis. If you have an issue in one year, we will test that same activity fund again in the next year to make sure that's corrected. So the comments from last year, you're correct, they're gone. We did test those same activity funds this year, found that those issues were corrected, and we didn't find any further issue.
Awesome, that's great.
And one more question. Does the board get a spiral-bound copy of the audit?
We can do that. We asked and everybody said, just give us PDFs, but if you want spiral-bound copies, we can print those off for you.
Oh, okay. I'd like one. I'm a paper person.
So am I.
Anyone else? Well, I have a question. On the, hang on, I'm just looking for the slide where you talk about the unassigned balance as percentage of budget, slide 4.
Mhm.
And we, for 2024, we're close to 7.5%. How do we compare to sort of other, is that pretty typical? Is that, from a financial perspective, is that responsible, appropriate, too high, too low? I feel like we try to get you to say this every year.
Yeah, you do. Most districts do. It's a wide range. There are some districts that have a deficit, so that number's negative, and it's obviously not a good thing. There's other districts that are up around 16, 20%. But obviously the state is trying to restrict you to 9% because they don't want you holding on to excess taxpayer money and then also giving you a subsidy. So if you're building up this big reserve, that's just not, you should be using what you collect in the year you use it or using it shortly after in the next subsequent year. So the state does try to put a downward pressure on you to keep it below that 9%. And like I said previously, it was at 3%. So a lot of districts tend to hover right around those percentage points. Interestingly enough, if you go to the Government Finance Officers Association, which is one of the main associations that deals with governmental audits of towns and school districts, they would recommend having about 2 months worth of operating expenditures in your reserves, which equates to about 16, 17%. So the state restricts you below that. So you're kind of right on target with where you should be and where the state law requires you to be.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? All right.
Thank you very much.
Wait, actually,
Sorry, I just didn't want
you
to
can
interrupt
say
any
it
board
louder.
members. I would like to just weigh in, just as, to put it in perspective, so this is the audit for 2024, so we have had a full school year, and a number of the comments that Tim was sharing have already been addressed over the course of this current school year, just in some of the changes we've made. So, for example, the journal entry review finding, during this audit year, we had just a director of finance and operations. In this current school year, we added a business manager and a director of finance and operations. And so by, kind of knowing it wasn't a finding before, but it's something that we knew kind of needed to be put in place. So now there are things in place where the business manager does something and the director of finance approves it. So in our next round of audit, I think we should see some of that stuff addressed. And same with our technology department had been working on a lot of the pieces that they noted, and it had actually already addressed some of it during the current school year in our cybersecurity work. And we are well underway in our capital asset, so we can take that off your plate. So we felt very confident in what those comments were, and it felt good to know that some of them we had kind of already addressed, and so we'll be able to look at it a little further to make sure we've done it thoroughly, but should be well underway.
Great, thanks. All right.
So, I'm sorry, I just
Sure.
remembered the capital assets, on one of the pages you pointed out there was, I see an increase, and it has to do with computers and that type of thing, that's why the capital asset account increased. But there were some other assets listed below, were they included with the, is that every asset that we have is in that,
I guess I don't know what you're referring to at the
yeah,
moment.
you had capital assets listed. It's on that page with the wonky, it's not, the columns aren't there, lined up, they're kind of blended on the page with the column. I'm sorry, I should have had it open to that. Maintenance. Well, let me generalize the question then. All our assets included is not a separate category for a different kind of an asset.
I didn't specifically speak to capital assets in the presentation tonight, but in
No,
your
you
financial
didn't.
statements.
It was in the report, though.
In the financial statements, yes, the capital
It was in the
assets
yeah,
are
right.
considered as part of your assets on the balance sheet. And typically, they are a fairly large piece of your assets on the balance sheet.
think she's
Because
talking
it-
about page 6, where you list the capital assets, and then you have a set of bullet points, significant capital asset additions during the year included, the laptops, et cetera, but those are only the additions that are being listed out. He's not listing out all of our capital assets.
No, I know he wasn't doing that, but that portion that you just read, that's part of the one above that, in that paragraph where you are, just above that, where it shows the growth in the assets from 23 to 24. I'm so sorry, do you see where you're on the
Yes.
same, right page?
Yeah,
Sam?
so there is more more description of the capital assets and the changes in capital assets in the notes to the financial statements. If you refer to, it would be page 29 of the report, there's a whole page of capital assets there, breaking it down by land, buildings, furniture, vehicles, leased assets, et cetera, showing you all the depreciation as well. Basically showing you that your net capital assets, so it's net of depreciation, went from about 18.5 million to about 19.2 million. So
Right.
you made some investments in furniture and equipment during the year, which increased your total capital assets.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Have a good night.
So we've hired our teachers. And now we would invite Ms. Dako back up to hear a report on the Elementary and Secondary Education Act Title Grant funding.
Yes, so there are two attachments on the agenda. One is an overview of each of the title grants, and then there's also a funding summary on there as well, so I'll be referring to both of those handouts. So as you know, every year we receive a pool of money under title funds, under Title 1A, Title 2, Title 4, and Title 5. Last year we received in total just under $400,000. You will see under the FY26 allocation column, there isn't much there because we haven't been given official allocations for any title except for Title 1A. But the application did open June 1st, and as part of our title application, we are required to share with the board and the community what our intended use is for the funds under each title. And under the funding overview document, there is my contact information as well as the 3 elementary principals' contact information if anyone does have any comment from either the community or the board or feedback on our plan. So to start with Title 1A, so this is the largest grant program under ESSA, and this provides supplemental funding for schools and students who are at high poverty levels. And just to ensure that we can give equal opportunity for students to succeed and obtain high quality education. So at MSAD 15, we allocate these funds to our 3 elementary schools. They have our highest free and reduced lunch rate compared to the district average. And specifically at those schools, we use these funds to help fund our intervention programs. So we pay a pre-K intervention teacher as well as numerous K-4 ed techs. And it also pays for RTI tools and family engagement activities. This is the one title fund we have received our allocations, which is at $319,246.05. It's about a $25,000 increase from what we received last year, which was good news because we were told to expect a slight decrease. So then the next title is Title II. Again, we don't have our allocations for this one yet, but we do have a plan for using the funds. Title II is our professional development funds, so we can help improve teacher quality. So we use this for our PEPG teacher leaders that help with our professional evaluation system. We use these funds to pay for our MTSSB teacher leader stipend, so that's our behavior intervention programs that we have in all of our schools. We use it for various professional learning around math and literacy. We have about 30 teachers in the district working on letters training, which is a program to deepen the understanding of the science of learning and improve literacy instruction. So that's really exciting, and we would love to build that capacity. You'll see on the funding summary that we are able to move some Title II funds into Title 1A to also help pay for our RTI staffing. However, without knowing our allocations, it's hard to know exactly what we're gonna move. But we'll get that information out when we have it. Title IV provides funding for student support and academic enrichment. It must fall under 4 different buckets. So it must fall under supplementing core instruction, safe and healthy students, effective use of technology or technology infrastructure. This is also one of those titles we're able to shift funds to Title I-A. Historically, we have done that. We've shifted all the Title IV funds into the Title I-A. Again, we don't know how much that is, but that is our intent to do the same thing next year. And then finally, there's Title V, also known as the Rural Education Achievement Program, and this provides funding to support students and teachers in rural locations to improve academic achievement. We were initially given estimates for Title V from the state a few months ago at around $8,500. And then the estimate has since been updated to $13,879. However, that is not yet become our official allocation, so we're still unsure on that funding. But these are funds that we also use to help support in paying for our intervention ed techs at the elementary level. So at this point, that's the quick version. There are a lot more specific details. If anyone has any feedback on our intent on how we're spending these funds, like I said, my contact information is in here, or if the board has any questions now, we can answer them.
Why are funds moved from the two and the 4 into 1? Why aren't the funds used for what they're intended for in those titles?
Do you want to
Happy to
answer
handle that?
Yeah.
So we have flexibility within titles to move money around so that we're meeting the needs of our district. And at the end of the day, across all of the titles, we have to be addressing what we've put in our comprehensive needs assessment, which is showing our data to show what our kids need, right? So the federal government and the state government, because it is a pass-through organization, expect that anything we're doing with the funds and any funds, and that we will move funds around to address what we have identified in our comprehensive needs assessment. So at its core, where we move the money around between titles is to address what we have identified as our core needs. The other reason I will tell you we move them around is based on what and how and the processes under each title. So Title IV, traditionally we have moved all of the money out of Title IV because the rules and regulations on how you have to use that money and how you have to report that money is extremely restrictive. And so it makes it hard to do what it is we need to do. Whereas if we move it to Title I, we have a little bit more flexibility in how we use those funds. So the state sort of expects us to be aligning our plans with our needs and our community feedback. And if that means moving money out of some titles and into others to make sure that we're addressing those needs of students, then they expect us to be doing that.
And that's all part of the application process too. We put all that data and information in.
And it's okay that you do that.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And expected.
Okay, interesting, because Title IV, you've taken all the money.
Yep.
Anyone else? Questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, oh, sorry.
She's not done.
I was gonna say you can run off,
again.
but you can't.
Soon, this one will be quick.
We weren't able to have a curriculum committee meeting this month. That's why you guys are getting the
that's
full
right.
show.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, thank
We
you
had
for.
some conflicts.
Thank
We're
you
all
for
curriculum
being-
tonight.
It's
Right.
all curriculum. We're all curriculum.
Thank you for being flexible and being here instead
Oh, yeah,
of
no
at that
problem.
meeting. So folks who are following along, we're gonna move on to an update on the Maine model of school supports.
Yes, so the federal Department of Education requires us to have a system for reporting out on the progress of our schools, and that's looked different with various systems over the years. Currently, the state is using the Maine model of school supports, and I'm just basically gonna go through this one-pager handout that is linked in the agenda. So essentially, the state measures every school against 5 indicators. And those 5 indicators are in bold in that first paragraph. So it's chronic absenteeism, which is our students that miss 10% or more of the school year. progress of English language proficiency for multilingual learners, academic progress in both math and ELA, and that's through the through-year assessment, and then academic achievement in math and ELA, which is the year-over-year growth, again, through the through-year assessments, and then finally graduation rate. So if you look at the handout on the chart there, there's 3 different tiers that you can be ranked as: the ATSI, Additional Targeted Supports and Improvements, and then that's tier 1, and then there's tier 2 and tier 3. You'll see below that Dunn, the high school, and the middle school are all labeled as ATSI. Basically, that means that any school with 1 or more student populations experiencing challenges across all of those 5 indicators. So when they say student populations, they basically mean every single subgroup. So you have all students, you have your male students, female students, African American students, low socioeconomic students,
IEP, no
IEP. I mean, I could go on and on.
English
There are a bunch
language
of
learners,
categories.
they're
So as
lots of
long as,
categories.
so we get scored in those areas as long as we have 10 or more students in that area. And the reason why they do 10 or more is if you know a school really well, it becomes identifiable. If you only have 2 students in a category, you could pretty easily determine how those individual students are performing. So essentially being tier 1, it means that you get professional development offered to you by the state at no cost. If we were tier 2 or tier 3, that's when the state starts sending in coaches. You have to have specific plans that you're held to for improvement. And if you look at the breakdown over on the left in the pie chart, about 60% of schools in the state are in that ATSI status, and then those higher tiers is about 20% of schools. Then we get to Memorial and Russell, and they are not identified for support. So because they're K-2 schools, they do not do state testing. So the only one of those 5 indicators they could be scored on is chronic absenteeism, and they're not held to just that. So they are not identified for support because they don't have enough of those categories to be rated on. So essentially, we just got this information a couple weeks ago. So the next step is going to be for our principals to take a deep dive and figure out where those areas are, those subgroups that are struggling across the indicators, and go from there. And all of this information and data is on the ESEA dashboard on the DOE site. You have to dig quite a bit, but it is there. So if anyone wants to dig into it a little more.
I think, excellent job, Kristen,
Thank
by
you.
the way. The only other things I would add is to keep in mind that this is the accountability year 24-25, but that means it's 23-24
Yes,
data.
yes.
So the data that they're reporting to us here is 2 years old, right? So that's kind of why when we're like, okay, wait, what is this data? We got to go back and look. It's not because we don't look at our data. It's because we got to go remember what the data looked like 2 years ago. So.
Yeah.
And I think just to put this in context, those that have been in education for a while, this is the federal government requires the state to have a system. At one time, it was called the failing schools system, right? You were identified as a failing school. That was replaced with the letter grades. Every school got a letter grade, A, B, C, D, or F. And now this is the new version of that. And essentially under the federal government, they need to be identifying about 10% of schools as needing deep support, about 10% of schools as needing significant support, and then they can do with the rest what they please. So it's one of those things where, you know, it's not that 8% like definitely hit this terrible marker. It's that they had to make a marker that identified 10% of schools. So it's an interesting process, but this is the system they're using right now. As you can see, the vast majority of schools in the state are at 60%. With that 19% that are not identified with support, for a lot of those schools, much like Memorial and Russell, they're not identified because they don't have any kids that do state testing, more so than because they're doing so swimmingly well. So you got to kind of take that part with a little bit of a grain of salt. But what this tells us is that overall our kids are doing pretty good compared to most of the rest of the state. The state is not running up, a flag of saying, holy cow, we have a problem here with any of our schools. So that is good, but it is one more way that they've analyzed the data for us, and so it's worthwhile to spend the time to go through it. And Kristen's been working with the principals to dig in a little bit to see what other things we can do to hopefully address the challenges.
Questions about that?
Well, the way I read it is, more than 80% of the schools in the state, need some support, and only 60% of our schools need some support. So we're at least 20% better than the rest of the
That's a good
state.
point.
So,
There we go.
seems like we're doing awesome.
Put that on the website. All right, this time,
Okay,
you can go.
thank you.
I mean,
Thank
unless
you,
you want
Kristen.
unless you want to stay.
Yeah. We're all about that.
All right, let's turn it over to Dr. Turner to lead us in discussion or some feedback, hopefully on the strategic plan for 25-26.
Thank you. So I just wanted a chance while we had the board together one last time in this iteration to get some feedback. We are, looking at the 25-26 school year. The administrative team will be spending 2 days in retreat, really getting deep into what our planning is for next year. And so I want to make sure that we are generally in line with what the direction the board's looking for us to go. So there's a rather long document that I tried to give you like the overview and then the details. 2 things here. The first is kind of the initial thinking of the administrative team after reflecting on what we accomplished in this current school year and looking at what was in the bigger strategic plan, in addition to then conversations we've had about what we want to do. We kind of put together some bullets of some thoughts of where we would like to head that we're looking for feedback on. And if it's helpful for background information, I then also included our deliverables for the current school year. There are updates in that document as to what has been completed and what didn't maybe need some more attention in future years. But that report is there for you as well. But I would basically want to kind of open it up to the team to say, how are these sort of the deliverable actions that you're looking to see? Are there things missing here? What else do you want us to consider as we kind of develop our final plans for next year?
All right, so just to be super clear, the first part, that's the bulleted list, is the initial working set for 25-26.
For 25-26.
And our color-coded 14 pages below is where everything stood that we had prior.
Correct.
Okay. How do we want to handle this? Everybody want to chime in? Popcorn? Does anyone have thoughts or questions to get us going? I have a question while everyone's reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And this may have been answered, this may be asked and answered, so tell me if that's the case. I know it's old news, but some of the things that have, most things in the look back have like a note as to where it was or what happened. The piece on a rigorous program option for the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost that one and there's no note. And I feel like we were like triaging. Have we lost that for good or?
No, I don't think so. We did do some work with the 8th grade to make more access to rigorous programs. Worked very closely with the 9th grade teachers to make some 9th grade content available at 8th grade. And so we successfully have implemented that. I know there was some interest in doing some more deep work on that. Again, that 8 to, we got to do sort of the 8 to 9, but then also then the 9 to 10, how are we teeing kids up? So I think in practice, we have started to put things in place. What we haven't accomplished yet is any kind of documentation that the average person could go to our website and find and say, oh, this is the pathway of how 8th graders are being prepared for this really rigorous work when they get to high school. So I don't think we noted that specifically in that bulleted list for the coming school year. It maybe kind of more generally is nested in that strategic communication and public relations planning of wanting to make sure that people do have information about their schools and ways that they can access it. But we can call that out specifically if you want to make sure that that's addressed in the coming year.
Yeah, I was just curious. I think it goes well with what you're saying broadly, though, communicating what's available, what are we doing, what then, we keep trying to get more kids to take advantage of the diploma endorsements, you know, at the high school level. So like, what can kids take advantage of? How do they get to it, and how do we tell them about it? Feels like that's kind of in that bucket. The other thing that jumped out at me is the AI policy and guidelines. I'm presuming we would look at both staff and students.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Did I see a hand or hear a noise? No? Sam, you got nothing?
I didn't, I was make sure you were all done.
I'm done.
I just wanted to emphasize, I do think the communications and PR strategy is really important. The other piece, and I'm not sure where it is here, you know, it's been talked about a few different times, and I know that we have been, you know, kind of short-staffed in the guidance department for a long time. And just I've been around graduating seniors particularly a lot in the last 2 or 3 months. And a piece of feedback that I've heard from a lot of parents is that they, and I don't know if this expectation is, you know, I don't necessarily have an opinion on what our role is as a district here. But a lot of them said that they felt like there should have been more like discussion of the hows of exploring a college career. And you know, right there in our mission is preparing kids for the next step. I think we do that, and I think our guidance department kind of has to triage kids who are in some sort of distress, and you know, maybe some of these kids, there's a group of kids who are like my kid, where both of their parents have degrees or advanced degrees. We know how to do college. There seems to be a gap where these kids who might be first generation college ready, their parents just didn't know how to help them go to college. And I think a lot of times they found resources, and sometimes it's just in the community, and I don't think it's like some, you know, disaster. But it's been mentioned to me 3 or 4 times where parents were just like, I thought my kid would get more information on like, how do you even look for a college, or, you know, how, you know, and so if there is some way that we could, you know, we always talk about transitions, and that transition seems to be a place where we could do a little bit more work.
Yeah, I've heard similar things, and that makes me think of the 8, 9, and then the 9, 10, and that's a pretty natural 11, 12. You know, I'm hearing a lot of, oh, well, they'll talk to the seniors in the fall. You know, more and more, you know, families are doing that work sooner, and I think it becomes...
and I think that's a lot of it, is that they felt like, oh crap, we were supposed to have done this a year ago, and I, you know, like, I think trying to, and I think we do really well, like PATH does a super job of preparing kids for, you know, this is how you get your HVAC license, this is how you get your engineering license. There isn't sort of a PATH's equivalent for kids who want to go to college, and I think sometimes we just assume, oh, they're high performing, they know how to go to college, and sometimes, you know, they just didn't know there was some stuff they should have been doing in like 10th grade, you know.
Fran?
I seem to remember I thought we got a program put in last year that the students can access that helps them with their career choices and that type of thing. So has there been any feedback on that program, and how many kids are participating with it, and, you know?
I think that might even been part of the trigger of it, is that a lot of parents, you know, clicked on that and they were like, oh, I was supposed to have done something by now, you know, and I think that is part of where it came from. I think, you know, it's only been 1 year, and so if your kid was a senior already, then it was like, oh, I missed something, you know.
But is there any study, and do we know for the year and a half, I guess, or so,
Yeah.
what has been the result of that, as many of the students participated in the program?
And I would just make sure to make clear, like, it is a program in the digital sense, like it is
Right.
something that kids access, not like a activity program that people, just want to make sure we delineated. And that is something we use as part of our advisory program, but is also then available to parents. But I think, so I'm noting that there's some energy on the board to have some report out on how how that's working for folks.
Yeah, and
But-
just the getting it out and the communication piece is, it does take time. You know, I saw it as a parent in my email. I knew I should have looked at it. Have I looked at it yet? No, I saw it the one time. Just that thing with humanity that we have to find ways to get it in front of them a couple times before it takes hold. Laura?
I would also add just preparation for kids taking the SAT. There doesn't seem to be a lot of information on that as well, and what the school district, does
Yeah.
offer the testing here.
So like the data that there was testing here wasn't readily available, is what you're saying?
Right, yeah, it doesn't get disseminated.
I think there's those who read the Patriot Express really carefully and those who don't. And that is like, when we lean on the one thing, but.
Yeah, it would be nice if it was more consolidated of,
Mhm.
this is sort of the path ahead where.
Maybe a toolkit like your budget for, like, that was super handy.
Graduation, kind of.
Jim?
Yeah, I guess my comment is, I don't know, I think there's like 40 deliverables in here. That seems to lack focus. I know this is a pretty big organization, there's we're serving a lot of different customers, so to speak, a lot of people with different needs and so forth, but, 41 deliverables? I've had expectations in my work history of, okay, this is what we want you to accomplish next year. It was always less than 40,
That's why I'm proposing maybe we try to get down to 13 next year, or maybe
Yeah.
even fewer. I totally agree with you. Some focus would be, I think, fewer things, and let's do them really well and
Yeah.
thoroughly would be
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
preference.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I
Jim.
really appreciate that.
If I put 3 things on my to-do list on Saturday morning, I'll get them done. If I put 20, I won't do any of them.
Fair.
Good point.
So on goal 2, if I get the pre-K to 12 life and career readiness standards, is that meant in kindergarten? Is that career readiness? I'm not sure what that means. Why is that in there in goal 2?
So the Maine learning results includes a set of standards called the Life and Career Readiness Standards.
So
Yeah,
what
my-
might be some
My
for a
question is about
kindergartner?
pre-K. It starts in pre-K?
Can you tell us what that would look like?
Off the top of my head, you're really pushing me, but let me just double check. So keep an eye, it's life and career readiness. So at early ages, as I recall off the top of my head in this moment, it's things like how do you speak to someone? How do you, when you're going to talk to an adult and you interrupt, you say, excuse me, right? And so it's a lot of like life preparedness skills, right? How do you make
Right.
friends? How do you speak to people? How do you, so it's,
Sit down while you eat. That kind of stuff.
it's life skills. So that's where it's kind of scaffolded right from pre-K all the way up through. Mhm. I'm trying to pull the standards up as we're sitting here so that in the Maine Department of Education.
Misty?
In the thorough skim that I did of this awesome document, I didn't see much in here regarding the new 3-year-olds that we're needing to deal with coming up soon. Did I miss that in here, or was it not in here?
No, it's not on there.
So 42 deliverables? Okay.
Yeah,
With a big
that
smile.
one's gonna have to go on the list.
Yeah. Is
I think I
that,
was like blocking it out.
right, and is that a goal or a thing that we know is happening? I
And
think
that's,
sometimes, some things are a to-do list and some things are goals, that are sort of.
towards our strategic objectives.
But it's an expectation from the state, so it kind of has to be made important.
Did we decide to adopt 3-year-olds,
You
or
have to.
is it, I thought we had a couple of more years for that, no?
So we have a few more years before we're required.
Yeah,
In the coming year, we are going to take on children who are 3 and in our pre-K program. So kids that are already in our school, we're gonna take on, our requirements as kind of a pilot intermediary step.
Is
And-
that the one, excuse me, is that the one you're working with the other communities as well? Is that part of that program?
So I am on a committee through the Greater Sebago Education Alliance looking at how we implement, the 3 and 4, I'm sorry, I am realizing I misspoke. We are not taking on 3-year-olds
I
next
didn't
year.
think
We're
so.
taking on 4-year-olds.
4-year-olds, that's what I thought you said.
You're right, yes,
Okay.
that is the delineation. We will be responsible for 3 and 4-year-olds. In the coming year, we are taking responsibility for the 4-year-olds, but not the 3-year-olds yet.
Right.
Thank you for that. So, so we're working with the Greater Sebago Education Alliance to sort of explore ways we can work together, to make it work. But in the meantime, we are moving forward to, sign on with our 4-year-olds.
Yep, okay.
An important difference.
Does anybody have a Kleenex?
I do.
I do.
Oh. I'll go to the restroom.
We'll pass them down. No, they're coming.
Oh, the pass it
There
down.
you go. She's coming. Anyone else? Misty?
I know we've
Thank you.
we've tossed around in facilities about, building needs and the age of our schools. Is that something that should be somewhere regarding, possible elementary consolidation? Should we be preparing a subcommittee for that?
That's in goal 3, I
In
think.
3? Did I miss that somewhere?
Continue facilities audits and development of long-term strategic renovation and replacement plans.
Okay, perfect. Got it.
So yes, and I look forward to your participation on that committee, Missy.
Can't wait. I'm ready.
Other thoughts?
Very thorough.
Feels like a
Feeling
pretty
okay,
good-
feeling like the right direction.
Yeah, and I do think it's worth repeating what Jim said, to let's identify fewer things and do them well. Then,
Okay. All right, we will go work on this some more and bring you something back
September.
sometime.
all right. Moving on, we have some batches of updated or formalized job descriptions. Just a reminder that it does not necessarily, these are not people we're hiring. These are jobs we already have and that may or may not have had adequate or updated job descriptions behind them. So we have some batches. I would hear a motion to consider the central office job descriptions as a group.
So moved.
Second.
Any thoughts, questions on those? Any compelling summary from the personnel committee?
One more time?
One more time?
Well, I haven't got to my report yet.
Okay.
No, I just will say, I mean, obviously I will have the report, but I might as well do it now. There's been very minor changes to all of these that we're gonna discuss tonight. Some of these have, forgive me, because I can't remember which ones do we not have on record? Do you remember? There was a couple of these. Do you, I don't have note of it. Anyway.
Yep, hold on. Give me a second.
So there were a couple that had record that the board had not officially ever approved. So obviously we had to go through and do that, which I think, did that end all of ours now?
No.
No? For
I
approval?
know.
I know. So we're
It did
basically-
not, but we're
yeah.
so close. We're
Yeah,
getting
so
there.
basically, whoever is the chair of the next session will have to pick up that ball and run with it. But again, it's going to be just a little bit of cleanup at first, to make sure that all of them have been recognized by the board and been approved. Again, everything you're gonna see here tonight, very minor changes, for grammatical, the punctuation. And the only probably big helpful thing that I noticed on some of them is they just didn't have the date that they were approved on the bottom. So since that way we know when they're gonna be up for rotation again in the years to come. Is that fine?
That's great.
All right.
All right, anything further on those, central office job descriptions? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, great, so we'll, file those with today's date then. I'd hear a motion to approve job descriptions of K through 12 technology integrator and PEPG teacher leader.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or thoughts, things you found in any of these?
With the, AI, have we addressed any of that in any of this, in the policies or in, people that we're hiring? Do we have any, I don't seem to see any standards on it. Some might use it, some might not use it. So should we be addressing that as a board?
Yeah, that's
And integrating that into some of this stuff here?
Yeah, so that's one of the big goals listed for our next coming year will be to create and implement AI usage policy. So then it wouldn't show up in the job descriptions, more it will be policy that'll go to everybody.
Okay,
So,
well, it'll be addressed and that's,
Yes.
yeah,
yeah,
that's the
that'll
issue.
be,
And then you can discuss the details, yeah.
anything else on these two teacher, and tech jobs? No? Seeing none, all in favor? Perfect. And then finally, would hear a motion to approve facilities and maintenance related job descriptions.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have anything on the grounds field specialist, pest management, or mechanic? I would note that the integrated pest management, we did talk about this, is not actually one person's full-time job. But because of the sort of rules around chemicals and stuff, it has to have a description, but it goes with someone
I
else.
was wondering.
Okay.
All in favor? Great. Next, this is so we don't yet know if or when we will meet over the summer. This sort of board session ends tonight, for those who haven't done this before. Is that just you, Teresa?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so exciting, you made it the whole, you made it our whole calendar. We will.
Doesn't happen to every board member.
Yep, wait, yes, sticker, put a sticker on the chart. So tonight is sort of technically our last meeting of this session. This is my last meeting as chair for this year, and Gary's vice. And so we will meet again on June 18th, but that will sort of start our new year, and we will have new folks, and we will have to start over. So as of now, we don't have any other meetings planned, and there may be a need to transfer some funds between one warrant and another. It's not known that that's gonna happen, but it would be nice if we could leave a sort of blanket authorization to let the business, central office keep doing their business. So, to cover that need in our potential absence, I would hear a motion that the school board authorize the MSAD 15 Director of Finance and Operations to approve, if necessary, a cost center warrant transfer in the fiscal year 2024-25 budget, provided that the transfer shall not increase the total budget and shall not exceed 5% of the total appropriation for any cost center to another cost center.
So moved.
Okay, so are there any questions or discussions?
I said second.
Yep, we've got many, pick your second, Maggie. It would also be in keeping with state statutes on use of those funds, so. Oh, Fran?
I would like to have an example of how this would come into place. What would create this need?
So, where we are right now, looking at what we're anticipating in financials, there is a distinct chance, we predict that we will be overspent in Article 6, that the expenses that are appropriately assigned to Article 6 could be, our best estimate, 5,000 to 10,000 more than what was budgeted. In order to mediate for that, we would look to make a transfer from another article that is underspent. For example, regular instruction tends to be a good place for that because that is our biggest article. And so we would transfer some of the budget from one article. So in this case, it might be Article 1 into Article 6 to cover those expenses that were beyond what was budgeted.
And what article, was that referred to, that article? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Article 6 is system administration.
And how did that become over budgeted, under budgeted? In other words?
We had a lot of system administration changes this year that were not anticipated. We also had a number of legal cases that we were not necessarily anticipating. And I'm not trying to be obtuse, it's,
Yes.
some of it would need to be discussed in
It would be an
executive
executive
session.
session. Essentially, these are articles that are largely impacted by payroll. So if we have someone who's maybe had a leave, or we had to cover in other ways, the specifics of which we wouldn't talk about outside of executive session, but saying like, well, we're gonna use some of these kind of payroll dollars for this payroll bucket, and it's still within our budget. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
you're just moving one bucket to another bucket, just to keep it all, but it's not increasing the budget, it's just
Correct.
reallocating a line item.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know.
Um,
Over here.
That would be the, I'm sorry, that would be the only example that you gave us. I mean, this is kind of like a broad thing. It makes me a little nervous when it's broad, because there'd be other, things that later on, that type of thing. I
Yes.
appreciate that, I'm not looking for detail, I'm just looking for,
So if it's helpful, let me kind of share where we are in each of our articles. Would that help you feel more comfortable? So again, this is estimated through the end of June, and huge kudos to David and Jen for putting this together. There are a lot of things that can happen, believe it or not, even just in the next couple of weeks. We're waiting on a Drummond and Whitson bill, so those always change the world. But essentially what we're anticipating as of right now is that Article 6 is likely going to be overspent. Our debt service is anticipated to be 99.26% expended. I don't anticipate we're gonna go over on that because that's a fairly set number. You don't have things that surprise you in that one. Transportation was another one that we were anticipating could potentially, we think we're gonna be okay, but we're a little nervous. We're at 94.96% expended. In that budget line. There's another one, school administration is at 94.62. Again, we don't expect unexpected expenses in that one so much, so we think we're gonna be okay there. But we have, every one of our articles at this point is anticipated to be more than 90% expended, and 6 of them more than 95% expended. So when you start to get within, 5,000-10,000 of your expended to actual, we need a little bit of flexibility to have to be able to move things between, should we need to.
I do know the money's there, so I'm not concerned about not having enough money, but, yeah, okay, well.
Adam?
When we did the recount last spring, that was paid for by the district?
Correct.
Would that have been from Article 6?
I believe the answer to that is yes.
Is that,
We would need to, I would need to research to confirm, but I believe that recount expense would have been in Article 6, yes.
would that be roughly how much we're over? Did we ever get a total on that?
We'd have.
I feel like we didn't get it formally, but the ballpark was a little more than that, that it was like a $16,000 event.
Are you serious?
Yes.
What was?
The recount.
Recount that was requested.
And
You can't make it overkill.
we would, I think it would be, it's a little longer, folks, hold it together. I think it would be appropriate and safe to expect that the finance committee would be reported out should things be moved when they next convene.
Yes,
So,
yep, absolutely.
Any other discussion on that? Okay. All in favor? All right, opposed? Perfect. Policies. I'd hear a motion to approve as written the GCOA supervision and evaluation of professional teaching staff proposed policy.
Can I make a motion that we consider them as a batch?
Great. Does anyone want to second that?
Sure, second.
All in favor on batch? All right, beautiful. So,
One big beautiful batch.
Yeah.
I would,
Just because basically all of them have very little textual changes. They are part of our just sort of annual and, ongoing review. The first two, we swapped in a suggested policy from the MSMA, just because it was more up to date, said the same thing, was a little bit more concise. There was, and followed our practices. Post-secondary enrollment options was really basically just to get rid of a post-secondary enrollment option that no longer exists. And the KI visitors to schools, we just took a review because it happened to come up. And we all decided that it was working fine and did not really need any adjustments. So really no substantive changes in any of these.
all right. So, do we make a new motion? Or is
I
your
just
mo- your,
voted
your
on
motion is
Consider them as a
sufficient?
batch, yeah.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments about any of those in the batch? All in favor?
Boom.
Beautiful. So those all. Oh, it is in here. I thought I didn't see it. I must have thought it was so foolish. So I just approached Dr. Turner on the side at the beginning of the meeting and said, "Oh, we didn't ask about authorizing the superintendent to hire staff." Yes, we did. There it is. Again, we don't know if or when we will meet again after June 18th. Historically, we have taken a break in the summer. It does look like we did meet a couple of times in the last few summers, so we can agree on that at our next meeting. Just in case, I would hear a motion to authorize the superintendent to hire staff during the summer. So moved.
Second. You said, yeah, it was a second, yeah.
Questions or comments on authorizing Dr. Turner to keep hiring teachers?
Hire those people.
Staff.
In this case, it's primarily referring to teachers. We would still bring them to you for a vote, but what it allows me to do is to give teachers the word that they have the job during the summer, and so they don't have to then, like, most teachers wait until board vote to tell their district that they're leaving, but once we get past August 1st, then contracts, like, so in our contract, if a teacher lets us know after August 1st, they have to stay with us for a length of time. So it starts to get problematic that we will have teachers on the first day of school. So what this does is authorize me to say to a teacher, we are going to hire you, you can put in your resignation with some authority. It still comes to you all for a vote afterward, and hopefully nothing would go to astray. But essentially what you're saying is that you trust me to move forward and speak on your behalf for teacher candidates from here till the next time you meet.
What else would we vote on besides teachers? Do you have any potential positions that we would vote on that aren't teachers?
Just teachers right now.
My only hesitancy is statutory that the board has to approve all teacher hires. So, it's technically conditional until we vote on it.
I can do some more research, but the guidance I have received from council is that the board allowing a temporary, for the superintendent to speak on behalf of the board for this temporary period is acceptable. But I can get some more guidance on that if it's helpful.
We also can plan on meeting in July and August.
Right.
I'm okay with that.
do we want to amend it to specify teachers? Or are you
No,
just
it's the
worried
teachers
about
I'm worried about.
Yeah.
You're worried about the teachers?
Just, it's a philosophical objection that I have, obviously. It's just that, by law, teachers cannot be hired by a district without approval from the board. So what is actually different than these people who have all been hired and then we approve them, and people who would be hired over the summer and then we approve them? Why would we make a distinction here when we don't make a distinction during the year?
So I would share that we do make a distinction during the year. When I speak with these folks and I tell them that we would like to move, my answer is I am going to move you forward to nominate for the school board. We're moving you into the next step of the process. I don't say, you're hired, right? Because
Right.
I don't have the authority to do that.
So that's
It's the
what I
board's
assumed is
authority.
right, and so then, right, that, again, it's a philosophical objection, but, because we are then going to vote on those teachers that you've told are hired. And so then we create theater and artifice, which I try to avoid as much as possible. And that's just my ethical objection.
Do you feel like we don't already do theater with the voting on of teachers?
No, I don't, because I feel like it's our job that we're supposed to get a little, brief, and if I know that person to be a bad person, I would vote against them. 99.9% of the time, the teachers that come in front of us are presented and nobody has a problem, but every once in a while, that's why we get the training, is that, we're supposed to object if we have some knowledge that makes us believe they're not appropriate. Again, I know I'm being pedantic, but, if we are going to then take a vote, I don't like the idea that theoretically we've gone back on our promise that they're hired,
It does tie our hands.
Yeah.
And just in 10 years on the board, we've never done this. So that's my other thing, which is, I know that new things are new, but I don't remember ever voting on this specific thing. And so if it hasn't been necessary in the 9 previous years, and maybe I'm crazy and I just don't remember it.
I did look back really briefly before coming here, thinking about this, the last 3 years, and we did meet in July and August. We didn't do
We
any
met, yeah.
committees. We met to hire teachers. So,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm saying we've never done this authorization paragraph
I
before.
gotta go with Sam on this one. Comrade.
I understand that it's a pedantic and ethical thing.
I appreciate your point, because if there is a thing, then at that point, there's nothing we can do about it. That teacher has broken with their district, the job has
Right.
been promised, and it could make a mess.
Is there a way to do it through email?
That's what I was just wondering.
Nope,
No.
we have to meet.
We have to meet in person. Okay.
I actually am a little queasy about I was gonna bring this up on June 18th. I'm a little bit queasy about going the entire summer without meeting at all.
We almost always have at least one meeting.
So we can.
August to hire teachers? Or
I
It would have to be July.
It would-
Usually
like
it's-
late
usually it's
July,
we
'cause-
usually meet in the 3rd week of July or something.
August 1st is kind of the.
I wouldn't be around because we're out of town.
That's okay, we
I'm
can
just saying.
discuss that, we can discuss that later.
But I'm just thinking, if the issue is August, if we can meet the 3rd, it's later in July, then we should be able to kind of cover.
We met July 19th last year,
Yeah.
We can't technically decide
but we
anything
can't
right
decide
now.
that.
Right.
Sure.
But
There's a workable, I feel like if it hasn't come up before, it's because there's been a fix in place.
and that's that we meet.
Right.
So we can tie the hands of the next board a teeny bit by not passing this motion, and then they will have to meet and hire teachers.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine too.
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of the districts do have this line every year at this time, so that they then aren't tied hands to have to meet in the summer. Which is why I put it on, as part of our new superintendent training. I was like, and don't forget, in May, you need to put this on so that you can continue your work in the summer. If the board wants to commit to working in the summer, then let's do it.
How many positions are you waiting to fill?
A lot.
A lot?
Not as many as you think. I do have a hiring report coming up in the next phase of the agenda. Do you want me to skip and do it now?
Well, let's resolve, we have a motion on the table now. Any more thoughts on putting forward the authorization.
Like restricting it to staff?
Yeah, or just are we ready to vote on it? No, and just the outcome will drive what we do next.
I'd say vote and we'll see what happens.
All right, so all in favor, meaning yes vote to authorize the hiring as a new practice for our board? Right? Yes. All in favor?
Oh,
Oh, we're holding with to tradition? Yeah,
What?
what? Oh, we
Oh,
are
we
yes?
have
We're
was
vote-
it, yeah, a yes.
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor? This is exciting, Maggie, you got this? So things happen.
history is being made.
Friend's gonna love this. Opposed?
Wow.
All right.
Sorry if I make another
No,
meeting.
it's means the group has some integrity for their job, and that's what we can do in July, and that's great. So we will see you guys in July. So to be clear, so that does not pass. Go ahead and spend money, but let's meet to hire people.
Audit.
So we got you halfway there. Committee reports, facilities. Do you have one? No, facilities
we
is
didn't
done.
meet.
Oh, right, cause you're the first one, okay. Finance, Gary is not here tonight. The minutes are linked, I think it was some year-end, and some auditing updates, and we had the audit report tonight.
I remember this one. Oh,
Yeah, but the biggest thing we kind of talked about was the warrant piece that we just voted on.
Oh, great.
We've covered a lot of what
Yeah.
has been already, that was already discussed between the warrant vote and everything like that, so we've covered most of that meeting in other meetings.
Perfect. Personnel, Cole, do you have a speech prepared?
I do. Everything we discussed earlier is what we did the last meeting.
Mic
That's
drop.
it?
The end.
The end. The end. End of an era. All right, curriculum committee is also done. Policy, Sam.
Yeah, we discussed all the policies, but also just, we did have our little reflection and feedback on the year in the committee. And we just wanted to commend Maggie yet again for doing a great job of making sure that the policies are organized and updated online. It's been very easy for us to follow. Our version control is excellent. And also, we really feel like the policy committee, for the first time really since the pandemic, has been able to be more proactive in reviewing policies, not because of some legislative update or not because of some triage issue, actually looking at things to make sure that we have paid attention to them on a rotational basis. And we felt like we were not under the gun all year. We're actually able to be thoughtful and considerate, and we're in a good place.
Thank you. That does remind me on the, so a lot of the reports do have those reflections in them. Adam, you had written one for facilities. Is it in the previous, is it in last month's?
It's in the minutes.
It's in the minutes
or
from,
attachments from,
it's in last meeting's packet.
yep.
Okay. So please do take a look at the reflections, in the committee minutes, as we wrap up the year and being thoughtful for next year. School board chair report, I don't have anything, formal. I just like to keep with the theme of the night of thanking everybody, for a great year. We had, I think it's worth taking a moment to reflect that this group of, board members has gone through a search for a new superintendent. We have, had new folks in the business office, and has been a pretty big transition year with some of our biggest lead positions at the district, and I think that it's gone pretty well. So I appreciate everyone's efforts, and look forward to working with we'll see. Most of us may or may not be back, and welcoming some new people. That'll be exciting. A reminder, go out and vote on Tuesday, June 10th. I believe it's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. For Gray, and 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. for New Gloucester at the fire station. And Gray is at New Begin.
Right here.
Right here. Come on down, vote. Of course, you can vote early at Town Hall. Actually, that might be wrapping up.
I think it's,
I think
tomorrow is the
tomorrow
last
might
day.
be the last
Tomorrow
day.
might be your last day to do that. Okay. I think that's all.
Before you move on, if I may congratulate you on your first year as chair. We appreciate your service. I know from experience that it is above and beyond the normal board position. There's quite a lot more work as chair, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thanks, Jim. All right, I think that's all of the mushy feelings we can handle.
What about the
Turner, what do you got for
Let's
us?
move on to some other mushy feelings. So we have some new hires, which goes along with a resignation, so you'll see her in two places. Lisa Knightley, who is a second grade teacher at Russell School. She's been with us a very long time. She is going to move into an RTI Ed Tech 2 position at Dunn School, so an intervention Ed Tech. You'll notice, some folks might ask why isn't that a transfer? Employees cannot transfer between collective bargaining agreements. They are separate. So if they can transfer within an agreement, they cannot transfer between agreements. So in this case, Lisa had to apply for the Ed Tech position just like everybody else, went through the interview process, was selected as the top candidate, and then resigned her teaching job so that she could accept the Ed Tech 2 job. So we're very excited about that. Beth Sutherland is a retirement. I did preview for that for you last month, so no one would be shocked when she was here tonight for the celebration. So we're very happy for her, sad for us. We've had a few resignations. Food service, Wanda and Deborah at the high school and the middle school. And then Miss Gaba, one of our teachers at the middle school, will be moving on. We're again very excited for her opportunity. She will be with us through the end of the year. This is a resignation for the upcoming school year. And then I already shared with you about Miss Knightley. The other thing I wanted to update you on is to let you know that we as a district have signed on to what's called the Harold Alfond Workforce Development Grant. It's a grant that the Alfond has given to the Maine college system to manage. And so we have become a partner in that. And what that means is that we can apply to have up to $1,200 reimbursed for workplace training and professional development for every single employee for each calendar year. So it's a huge opportunity for us to get a little more bang for our buck. It is a matching program, so for every dollar that we spend on someone, we can get $1 reimbursed. And so we're starting off in this first year, we're working closely with the person managing the Alfond Workforce Development Grant, who's someone who I worked with for many years. We actually shared an office for 5 years. So she's been right with us helping. The plan for this current year is to kind of take what we already planned to do and run it through this system. And so essentially, we could have some savings in what we thought we would need, potentially. But the plan is to kind of run through what we, at first, what we're already planning to do, and then start exploring, okay, so then what additional options does this give us? So we don't want to come out of the gate adding lots of new training. We're gonna start figuring out the system with training that we already have planned. But it does give us, an opportunity. Kristen talked about the letters training before, which is literacy education for teachers of reading and spelling. And that, whereas we budgeted to do, I want to say 5 people in the new program, with the matching dollars, we could do up to 10 if more people were interested. So it does give us a little more flexibility. So that's that. We're excited about that. We'll keep you posted. And then last thing I have for you is a hiring update. To, I think it was Fran's question earlier, where are we, how are we doing? I'm gonna say not bad. Hot off the presses, to the point that it's not on the agenda, it just have come to agreement in the last little while and are prepared to make it public. We have a director of curriculum and staff development.
Hey.
Very excited. should say she hasn't signed the contract yet, but we're close, we're there. We had Kathy Martin has agreed to come on with us. Kathy is currently the head of school at St. Dom's Academy. Before that, she spent 7 years as an assistant superintendent in RSU 4. She was a principal in elementary school, more than a decade of elementary teaching. She has extensive experience with portrait of a graduate work, with individualized professional development systems, as well as many other activities that are aligned to our priorities. So we think she's really going to be able to come in and be a huge asset just from day one. So we're very excited to have Kathy coming on board. She is under contract with St. Dom's through June 6th, and then she's going to start her transition. She will officially start with the district on July 14, thank you. I couldn't remember what the Monday was. July 14 will be her official first day. At our next board agenda, assuming she's available, we'll have her come so you all can meet her.
And if I could chime in here for a minute, Chanda was so professional in this. I just want to give a little plug in this process, having it be sort of, hiring her replacement to report to her was really thorough, and all applicants were considered. There were 20 plus applicants.
We had a very deep pool.
It was extremely deep pool. I participated in that committee, so all 20 of them were reviewed and ranked by a group of enthusiastic staff members who were on that team, and really kept it separate from Chanda until the field was whittled down. Some interviews, we did a very long interview day, and Kathy was amazing. We ended the day being like, you have to call her right now. This is an emergency. So a lot of great energy, super excited to see what she can bring to the team.
Absolutely. So we're excited about that. In addition to that, at the moment, I think we've got 4 teaching positions open. One is Lisa Knightley's that I just mentioned, her leaving. With a number of them, I don't want to sort of say too much about the system, but I have a number of folks who are ready to go on our next agenda for some of those open positions. I do think something of note is that of the 3 special education positions that we've had open at the middle school, we now have 2 of them filled. So we are well on our way with that, so I'm very pleased. And then from an ed tech perspective, we do have an ed tech hire with Miss Knightley, so that is probably the lowest it's been in a while as far as our number of open positions there. So we, hiring season is not over. The comings and goings still have some to go, but I'm feeling like we're in a pretty good place overall.
Any questions or comments on that? Thank you. All right, so that leaves us with our final item, an executive session. We will not return after this executive session, so we'll go off of air for that, and we will not come back. And I would hear a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA subsection 4056A, superintendent goals and evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All right, so we will enter that at 8:17.
Can we take like a 5-minute break so I can clean up?
We can.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.